Here, but this is actually going to be a tutorial on how to use Photoshop to do some video projection mapping on the cheap. Well, as cheap as it is to have Photoshop. So what you're seeing in the video recording of my projection is an animation that I created using the timeline feature in Photoshop, but specifically with a little bit of a hack that uses this extra preview window of whatever you're working on so that you can kind of map it out, then use the timeline in Photoshop to animate it. You don't have to animate it. You could just do like a still image mapping and then export it as an MP4 that allows you to go full screen. Right now, I am looping this using the VLC player in full screen. So if I actually go to that, let me click on it and escape, you'll see this is just an MP4 file, and this has been set up as a dual screen, right? So I'm going to close that. And I'm going to kind of show you how I did it. This is my extra screen that I was telling you about that comes out of Photoshop. So even though I'm in Photoshop right now, I'm going to go ahead and reduce my timeline view here. If I click on one of these layers, you'll see what happens. Then I'm going to kind of deconstruct this. So if I take a layer off, you'll see James Brown with the guitar disappears in the bottom right. I'll do this layer by layer. The next layer, that was just an extra layer for the animation line. There's the middle one. And there's the top one. On that top one, I could transform that layer. Let me click on it and transform, and you'll see James Brown in the preview. A little bit of a delay, but James Brown will get bigger or smaller, right? So I'm going to do this from scratch so you can kind of see how this works, but I wanted you to see the end product so that you can get excited about, how we'll move forward. All right, let's close this. This was my original just image file that I think I got this image years ago online. But to start off, we're going to go to Photoshop, right? Right now, I'll go ahead and leave my timeline up here at the bottom, but if you've never used Photoshop's timeline, you go to Windows and you go down to Timeline. If it pops up in a pop-up, you can just drag it down to the bottom so it becomes part of your frame, right? So I'm going to go ahead and create a new document. Now, this is an important step here. This is all based on the resolution of your projector. The projector I'm using right now is a full HD projector, so I'm going to use 1920 by 1080 on my projection, and I'm going to go ahead and set that there as my frame size, 1920 1080, resolution is 72 because it's screen based, and hit create, right? So here is my main menu. I know you're not seeing anything on my projection cam yet. Oh, actually you are, because I still have my old one up. Let me go ahead and get rid of that and go ahead and close that. We'll close that for now. And sorry, I'm getting a little pop up there. Let's not save that. Okay, sorry, I forgot it kept both open till you close them. So anyway, you can only see this on my screen recording right now. I basically have a 1920 by 1080 canvas. Now, if I want this to show up in my screen, first off, make sure whatever you've got set up is using as a separate display, right? And just a little bit of kind of housekeeping here. You're not going to mirror. You're going to set up your screen, your projector, as a separate screen. Another bit of housekeeping I want to bring up is I'm going to bring up my system settings here. I think I have them kind of tucked away behind. Yeah. There's a thing you need to get rid of, and it's under what used to be called it's still called Mission Control, but you don't have your own tab anymore in the new system settings for Apple. You got to go to Desktop and Dock, and down at the bottom here, make sure you have displays have separate spaces turned off. If you don't, on your dual monitor, you're going to end up with like a file, like this bar up here at the top is going to be up there no matter if you go to full screen or not, and it's going to kind of ruin your projection mapping. After you turn it off, you have to actually log out of the user and log back in. But once you do that, you'll get rid of that little header at the top. It's on by default. All right, I'm going to close that. Back to Photoshop. So now that I have my screen, let's see how we can make this show up on my my extra monitor, which is running through my projector right now. So to do that, I'm going to go to Window, and I'm going to go to Arrange. And here's the cool little hack. If you go here, you can say New Window for Untitled 1. I don't want this to be Untitled 1 anymore. I'm going to save this. Let's call this, bear with me here. Why am I not saving? Let's do Save As, and I'm going to save on my computer. I'm going to do JB Guitar Animation 2. I'm going to save this to my desktop. And now, just so we can see it a little bit better, when I go to Window and Arrange, you'll see New Window for JB Guitar Animation 2. When I do that, I just get an extra tab here, and it's kind of a repeat of what's going on here. So I'm going to go ahead and take that and I'm going to open it up and drag it out so it's in a little pop-up window. And then I'm going to drag that over to my second monitor, which is running through my projector. Now over here, what's cool is if I hit F on my keyboard, it goes full screen. And if I hit F again, it goes back, right? So I'm going to hit F. You'll see my rulers are still up, so I'm going to hit Command R to get rid of the rulers. And the last thing I got to do is double-click my resolution for it to fill the screen. It's 1920 by 1080 on that screen, so that's my projector's resolution, so it filled it all automatically, which is really cool. Now, the first thing I want to do from here is I want to go ahead and just fill my background with black. I can go to Edit and Fill and choose black and hit OK. And now I have a blank canvas to work with, right? Now I'm going to go grab my James Brown image here. I'm going to copy it. I did Command A and Command C to copy, and then I'm going to paste it. And now that's on its own cool layer there, right? And you can see James Brown is showing up over here. Just because I'm going to play with his resolution, I'm going to turn James Brown into a smart object here. So convert to smart object. And that way it doesn't become destructive pixel editing. It will allow me to maintain the resolution no matter what scale. So I hit Command T. If you don't know Command T, just go down to Edit and Free Transform. I get my nice handlebars. You see the handlebars don't show up in the monitor. It's so cool. Yet, as I scale, it scales over there. There is a little bit of a lag, so it's hard to do it like exactly like if you're going to try to do this as like a live performance or something. But as you can see, as I scale JB down here, JB for short, and then I move it over on my screen, I eventually can figure out like where I want to put them. In this case, I'm going to put them up on this tall piece of horizontal cardboard like I had in my original animation, and I'm going to scale them up a little bit more, scale them down in this direction a little bit more. There we go, that's pretty good. I think I can scale them up on the top right just a hair more, a little bit more. That's pretty good. And then I can use my arrow keys to kind of tap them down where I want them, right? And off to the left a little bit. Now I can go ahead and hit Enter, and that's my first layer ready to go, right? I'm going to go ahead. If you're ever wondering, just side diversion from James Brown, you can always go to Google and Google Images and look for like a video projection mapping calibration grid. I have one, so I'm going to go to my desktop here, and I believe I have it right here. Yep. This can help too when you're first mapping things out. I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to bring it into my composition just above my background layer, and I'm going to scale it up so it fills the whole thing. Sometimes this can help too, just help you figure out like where all you might want everything to be in your grid and kind of how you're going to map stuff out. Again, just kind of a helpful tool to have in there to kind of see the whole thing, especially if you're going to do more like rectilinear. I'm just putting photos onto this right now, but I will try to like adjust him to the angles on some of the more perspective mapped parts of this piece. So I'm going to turn that off. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate my layer here. I'm going to drag this down onto the new layer button. That'll duplicate it. And I'm just going to bring them down and put them on. Let's go with the pizza box next, right? And I'm going to go ahead and transform again. Scale them down a little bit. That maybe is maybe a little too small. Let's bring them back up. There we go. On this one, I'm going to go ahead and edit and transform, and let's flip horizontal. Let's put him going in the opposite direction just for a little visual variation there. And then I'll do them one more time here. I'll go back to the original, and I'm going to drag it down onto the new layer button there. And let's bring him, that'll be our third one. I'm just dragging him up to keep things oriented a little bit better. Whoop, sorry about that. We'll bring him down to the bottom right. This one will probably have the most extreme angle on this. This is my cat tree that I'm using for this particular tutorial today. Worked out to give me a couple of different angles. This one I'm going to play with a little bit more. So I'm going to bring him down, scale him in there. He's a little bit funky look. there's my joke for James Brown. He's a little bit funky. But I'm going to go ahead and play with his perspective a little bit to try to just make him look good on that angle. So this is starting to get into like the actual like projection mapping, like how do I change something, and I might do this twice just to do something with some lines to show you what I'm talking about. So under Edit, if you come down to Transform now, Perspective is a really cool one to work with because Perspective really just like changes that angle of what he looks like. So I can kind of start to play with these a little bit and make him look to my eye, to the camera, a little bit more correct, right? And if I adjust that middle one, I can get the angle, and I can get this angle and bring it up a little bit. And I can really start to make him look like he's at that angle for a reason, right? Like he actually fits the page. I'm going to use the kind of bottom of his image there to crop it a little bit. There we go. That's looking pretty good. If I tap that down a little bit, his legs are actually like mapped really well to that angle now for this particular mapping project. So just keep that in mind, as we're working with straight things. So for an example, I'm going to make a top layer here, just opposite him, and I'm going to put a couple of lines on it, right? So I'm going to fill this with a bar here, and I'm going to scale this down a little bit. I'm just doing this on the fly to illustrate my point. And we'll bring this over here. I'm going to do it on this side. So say I have this, and I'm just going to duplicate this a couple times. I'm going to combine my layers, which is Command E, just to speed this process up. These aren't perfect. Let's duplicate these and combine them, and one more time. Maybe up just a hair, see if I can do this on the fly, and again, combine those. Now I have something rectilinear, but you can see when it's projected it has a slight tilt to it, right? And if I try to scale this to the right a little bit or scale this up a little bit, it only gets more pronounced, right? So I'm going to bring this over here. And if I hold down, I believe, Shift, I can just take out the edge here. There we go. That's pretty good, right? So now I have something that's like not quite lining up with the visual plane of that box. This is just to illustrate how that transform and perspective can help, right? So now again, if I do this again, I can map this so it looks a little bit more correct to the eye, and I can kind of adjust things a little bit here, right? And I'm going to bring that down and adjust it. It's just one of the many tools in Photoshop. See how I'm lining up with the bottom of this cat tree just a little bit better now, and I'm actually getting something that looks correct to the eye. You got to tweak it. Sometimes you got to zoom in to do it. That's what's cool about having this dual monitor kind of setup with Photoshop's preview, is that I could zoom in and really get it just right and continue to tweak it a hair more. There we go. I think I nailed it. So now you can see how I have a really nice mapped linear. It's easier with something linear because I'm projecting on something linear, this box-like cat tree, than James Brown's image, which can be a little more arbitrary as to whether it's been mapped well or not. So hopefully that helps a little bit. So now we have actually four different things to play around with that we can animate, right? Now, this is kind of the second half of the tutorial here. I'm going to go ahead and save this so I don't lose anything as we go. Now, right out of the gate, we could do a frame-by-frame animation, but you know, frame-by-frame animations, your only option to export it is as an animated GIF. GIFs aren't easy to go full screen with, so I don't really recommend it to do projection mapping. You could do a frame-by-frame animation, and you can see down here in my timeline bar it says create frame animation, but if I click on the arrow I can also use what's called the more advanced video timeline. But I'll start with the frame animation and then I'll show you how to convert it. It can get complicated really fast, so I feel like it's easier to just go right to the video timeline. If you've never used the video timeline, it's got keyframes. It's kind of like a baby version of After Effects, right? But let's say we start with just a keyframe animation. This basically just captures one frame of everything that's going on currently in my scene. If I create another frame, then I can play with stuff, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say this layer right here, I'll just change it to, I will give it a different fill on the second layer. I will go ahead and fill it with, instead of black, let's do a color. I'll go red. And actually, I should have constrained its proportions first. Sorry about that. I'm going to go ahead. That's this little button here. You have to do that so you can fill it. I'm going to go ahead and change this. I can do it from here as well, but I'll go ahead and choose red. Option delete fills. But here's the problem, is that you can see it also did it on layer 1. So not everything works that way. So I'm going to go ahead and undo. Let's try another route. another way to colorize, I can go to, I double click the layer in this little gray area, brings up the layer styles, and I can add a color overlay. And if I turn that to multiply, it'll do it. And you can see like some things become like permanent and some things aren't. This is just an effect. You can see it's a layer effect that was turned on. And in this case, there's no layer effect. So some things work with the timeline and some don't. But when I go to animate, it's going to go from white to red on that particular one. I'll do the same thing on James Brown just to, in the middle, just to illustrate again. So there's JB there. So again, in the gray area, just double click it and you'll get this layer style. And then you could bring up, there's all sorts of options in here to play with, but I'll do color overlay. This time instead of red, I'll do like a nice light blue. Remember to turn on multiply. If you don't do that, you just get like a fill on the whole thing. Multiply, particularly on an image like this, will work. Sometimes you want to try something else like screen or overlay. In this case, actually, you know what? I'll do the overlay. That looks pretty cool. Now, the other thing I can do is I can move things. You can't scale them, but I'll show you another trick over the scaling that kind of can work if you duplicate the layer on the second one. So I'll go back to this first one that I made, the one at the top. This one will move, so I'll go ahead and move him off to the right a bit. And you'll see in my projection, he's off to the right. Maybe just a hair more so you can go right up to the edge. Oh, that was a little too far. There we go, right to the edge, right? And you'll see if I move back and forth on my frames, everything is changing nicely. The first frame stays the same. The second frame now has these changes, right? The last one I'll do is to try to show you a hack around scaling, because again, if I scale this, it's going to scale it in both of those frames. But kind of a hack for this one, which I believe is this layer right here. Yep, I can duplicate it. And on this, and then I can turn off the first layer and I can transform this one, because you can turn on and off layers and it'll register it, right? So I'm going to scale that down and hit return. Now, as I jump back and forth, I got to turn off that new layer in the first frame, but then as I jump back and forth, you'll see, oh, and I got to turn this one back on. I know, it messes with you. And now you go back and forth and it's going to jump between the two. The only other little trick I'll do, because I've done this before, is I'm going to move the new layer under the other layer so you don't see the borders of the image because it's going to basically like fade one on top of the other. Now, I can set durations of how long each frame is up. I could say leave this on for 1 second and leave this on for 1 second. And if I play this, it's basically going to just flash back and forth, right? There's not much of an animation going on, but you know, I've got still images that are flashing back and forth the way an animated GIF would, right? Now, one of the other things I could do is I could select both those frames. So I can click on one frame, hold down Shift, click on the other, and then I can, sorry, I keep getting my dock. I can click on this little tweening button here. I can tween the animations, and this is beginning to like try to do what like keyframes would do. So I'm going to fill in between those two frames with a number of frames that are going to be kind of like partial steps along the way. So I'm going to go ahead and tween this. I'll say let's give it 8 frames in between and hit OK. And I want to speed this up a little bit though. Instead of 1 second, I'm going to change this to like a 0.1 second delay. And let's see how it does. There's a little bit of a delay, but you can see this sort of fade happening. You can see James is bouncing along the top. You can see the shift from white to blue in the middle. You can see the little fade of the big to the small down at the bottom, and my white grid to red grid, right? It's doing the best it can with what it can do inside of these this timeline frame animation system. Unfortunately, the only thing we can do if we come over here to the right of the frame is we could basically, there's no options here to export it. And that's because, you know, it doesn't have keyframes. It can't make a video yet. I could go up here, File, and I could go ahead and export this. If I go to Export and Save for Web, I could export this as an animated GIF. I choose GIF. I can make it loop forever. I can do that, and I can save this to my desktop. Give it a second here. And if I go and do that, then I do have this lovely animation going on here that you can see in my screen recording. But there's not an easy way to go full screen with it. Well, actually, I take that back. Let's try it. I'm going to take it over here and see if I can get it to go full screen. I might be wrong on this. I'm doing just the preview. Hey, check that out. Actually, that's not bad. And it's a little bit smoother on the export because the preview was kind of slowing down. So hey, what do I know? Animated GIFs can kind of work. On a Mac, you can hit spacebar to preview it and then click that full screen button, and there you go. There's a hack on an animated GIF projection mapping, right? Not too bad, and actually a little smoother than I thought it would be with the frame interpolation. So, you know, you learn something new every day. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to hit escape. I'm going to move my GIF back over to my main screen here, hit spacebar to go back down from the preview. But let's see how to convert this to a video timeline, okay? So I can take my same animation here, go to the little hamburger. Here, let me move this over so I have the full screen here. Let me move this over to the little hamburger button here, and let's convert this to a video timeline. First thing you got to do is it really messes with like the length of it, so zoom into it so you can see how long this is. It basically converted this into a 1 frame, 30 frame per second. So it's basically a 1 second animation. I'm going to make this a little bit longer. I'm going to drag, let me bring up my window here just a little bit to get a little more screen real estate. See all the layers. Don't need this bottom layer, but I'm going to grab all of these and I'm going to try and drag these out a little. I guess I got to do them one at a time. I'm going to drag these out to be 3 seconds, maybe 2, let's go 2 seconds long. I think almost. There we go, 2 seconds. And let me drag all these out. The good thing is it kind of snaps, so it makes it easy to do them. Sorry I can't grab them in a group. Maybe there is a way to do it, but I don't know how in Photoshop. I would usually use After Effects, but that's not what this tutorial is all about. So there we go. Just to make it look even though I didn't animate that bottom one, I'll put that there as well. So now if we open these layers up, you're going to see the keyframes that were in there. This is the weird thing is like, you know, coming from the frame by frame, not only does it like make way too many keyframes, but it makes them all these like end stop keyframes, and you have to turn them back into linear interpolation. So the first thing I'm going to do is just select all these extra ones in the middle and delete them. And then I'm going to drag these keyframes to the end of the animation. This will lengthen the whole thing, right? And then the last thing I'm going to do, and I don't know if I can do this in a group or not. I'm going to try. Let's see if I can grab them all at the same time. And then right click on them and change them to linear interpolation. Yay, it did it. It does them in these like hold interpolation, which basically it was like it would stay the same way till it gets to the new keyframe and then it would just end. By changing it to linear, it'll actually like show the whole progression now. And it's doing this at 30 frames per second. So let me do that again. Now we're actually getting like video level effects, right? If you ever want to change your frame rate, you can come over here and you can go down to, where is it? Set timeline frame rate. Right now by default it's 30. You could go down to like 24 or 15. It would just get a little more choppy at 15. So now that I've converted this, I have a lot more control. There's a lot more things you can do. You can see I'm setting like keyframes on opacity, transform style. I'm not going to teach how to do all this. There's plenty of other tutorials on how to make frame by frame animations. But what I am going to show you is now that it's a video tutorial, I can go over here and say render video. Photoshop has this nice render. MP4s are great. I'm going to keep it this default H.264 MP4. You can see it's already set to 1920 by 1080. I can select where I want to save it. I'm going to save it to my desktop. And I'm going to go ahead and hit render. And as soon as this is done exporting, which is not too bad, I'll hide Photoshop and show you how I'll open this up as a full screen video. Okay, so that's done. I'm going to go ahead and hide Photoshop. Here we go. If I give you the preview of it, I have a nice MP4 now of my animation, right? I'm going to go ahead and go over to my projection window and hit F and go ahead and close that as well. And now I'm going to drag this because I'm using QuickTime to do screen grab. I'm going to open this up in VLC instead. And I'm going to go to video playback and good, I have it on repeat. So I'm going to take this over to my dual monitor now. And then I'm going to go back over here to VLC. And I'm going to go to video full screen. And there we go. It's perfectly mapped. If I don't move my projector, I have a perfectly mapped and I can leave it on a loop. This projector could actually play back from its internal video player, so I could just disconnect from the computer entirely and just have my nice looping video installation. So not bad, whether it's the GIF or this in the MP4 format, two different ways to make some projection mapped animated elements in Photoshop. That's right, I said Photoshop.